Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another class in the Torah Or project. I think this is our sixth class, Baruch Hashem. Okay, amazing. We got through the first month, and this will be, it appears to be a shorter mimer. We never know where it's going to take us. And the Mitzvah Hashem next week we'll be completing the last mimer of Bereishis in Torah Or. That'll be on the longer side. So, first of all, hello on the Zoom as well. Thank you for joining us. Thanksgiving Sameach for anybody who's celebrating the ending of Sudas Haida. That every moment of life is another moment to share and express our gratitude to Hashem for giving us life. So, we are blessed to be on page 14 of Torah Or, and we'll begin with a few introductions just to get some context of the mimer. Oh, Tom, so much for that. If you guys can put yourself on mute, thank you very much. Mute. Thank you. Okay. So the pasuk says, "Vayikach lo lemech shtei nashim." We have lemech, right? This is towards the end of Parshas Bereishis, which begins the lineage, the chronology of history, and it enumerates, just completes the story of Cain and Hevel. Cain and Hevel are the two sons of Adam Harishon, and it says Cain fathers a child and builds a city, and there's 6 generations from Cain to Lemech. So now you have Lemech, the great-great-great-grandson of Cain, and he took for himself 2 wives. And the name of one wife was Ada, and the name of his second wife was Tzila. Okay? And Ada gave birth to Yaval. Who is Yaval? This is our mimer. Yaval hu Haya Avi Yoshev Ohel mikne. Yaval was the father of tent dwellers and with livestock. V'shem achiv Yuval, and the name of his brother was Yuval. Hu Haya Avi kol toifes kinor ve'ugav. He was the father of anybody who would take hold of a harp and a flute. V'tzila gam hi yalda es Tuval Kayin. Tzila also gave birth to Tuval Kayin. Who was Tuval Kayin? He was loitesh kol chodesh nechoshes ubarzel. He was a bladesmith of every craft of copper and iron, meaning to say he was the first smith and particularly the first creator of weapons. And va'achos Tuval Kayin Naama, and the sister of Tuval Kayin was Naama. Okay, and interestingly enough, the pasuk negates what she does, meaning to say the pasuk is enumerating these 4 children of Lemech. 3 of them have crafts, have certain expertise, and the 4th child, the daughter of Lemech, the sister of Tuval Kayin, was Naama, and it doesn't say who she is. Now, who do we know she is? Noach's wife. So perhaps we can say that to be a mother of all of creation, as the Mabul rejected everybody and eliminated everybody except Noach's family, that's good enough. You don't have to say what she does, rather who she is. Her whole identity is to be a mother of the next life. Exactly. Okay? So there's a lot happening here in regards to the psukim and entering into the pshat. But just to read a little bit of a commentary, I'm using this incredible sefer called the Book of Genesis with commentary and insights from 500 sages and mystics by Open Book Press. So it says here in the name of Rabbi Zarya and Medrash Rabbah that in the amoral generation of the flood, a man would take 2 wives, one to bear his offspring and the other for pleasure. And the pleasure wife was given a sterilizing potion and was adorned as a bride and fed delicacies and was for her husband's constant companion. And the breeding wife was spurned and lonely as a widow. So it says Tzila, which literally means shade, was the wife of Lemech who he took pleasure in. And so called because she constantly was at his side like a shadow is to a person, so they called her Tzila, like shade, she was constantly next to him. Ada, which literally means removed, was disdained was the disdained wife and used for procreation. This is what Rashi brings in the name of the Medrash Rabbah. When parents bring a child into the world, their thoughts and intentions have a lasting imprint on the child's character. When Lemech was with Ada, their intent was to propagate the race. Accordingly, the children born from their union had a productive impact on society. For example, Yaval assumed the spiritual vocation of Hevel, and Yuval was the first to play music with which man sings the praises of the Creator and which serves as a conduit of divine inspiration. In contrast, Lemech's relations with Tzila were the sole intent of self-gratification. Accordingly, the son that was born assumed the vocation of his namesake Cain, which was what? Tuval Cain, right? Named after his great-great-great-grandfather, fashioning implements of killing and destruction. This is from the Kli Yakar. Okay? And then it says Tuval Cain's sister was Naama. This was the wife of Noach. And it implies that the seed of Cain was not completely lost, and that humanity is ultimately descended from both Shes and Cain. Okay? Now, this is introduction number 1, just for some context. So before we get into the Maimer, we're going to quote from the Gemara in Shabbos. So it says, Hine Amar Azal, our sages say, and this is from Gemara Shabbos Daf Nun Aleph, that the Mishnah says, Bameh behema yoitza ubameh eina yoitza. This is speaking about the laws of carrying, that we are not able to go out into a public domain by carrying an object, and so too, as a extension of that, is our animals. They also cannot. So the Mishnah says, with what may an animal go out into the public domain on Shabbos, and with what may they not go out? So it starts to enumerate. A camel may go out on Shabbos with an afsar, and a naka may go out with a khatam, and luvdikin may go out with a perumbia, and all these terms the Gemara defines of what they are. And in general, v'chol baile hasher yoitzin basher v'nimshachin basher. What does this mean? In general, all animals that typically have a chain around their neck when they go out, literally a harness or a bit or some type of muzzle, right? If that's how they typically wear it, then they may go out with that chain on Shabbos and they may be pulled by that chain. And if these chains contracted spiritual impurity, one may sprinkle waters of purification on them and immerse them in their place. Okay? Now the Gemara is basically asking, well, what if the chain or the muzzle or the harness is not the appropriate one for that particular animal, right? And therefore it would be considered carrying, right? So let's say are wearing glasses for prescription on Shabbos carrying. No, they're part of your face, right? Earrings, bracelets, whatever, jewelry. Okay, but let's say something that is not part of you, right? That would be considered carrying. So this is because it's considered as part of their being, therefore it's totally fine. Now, what is this Hebrew term? Sher, right? Collar or bit or muzzle or harness is spelled Shin Yud Resh with a tzere, sher, right? Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us how to look at a Mishnah and seemingly nigle and totally combust any of our preconceived notions. And really the essence and power of this mimer is the power of music. And even though it's only one paragraph, and this I can thank Rabbi Yossi Paltiel for his incredible shiur, 2-part class. If you guys want to hear more elaborately, I don't think we're going to go into it as deeply as he does. But this is, as you see, we're on page 14 of Torah Or. It takes one column. This is 12 pages in the Mittler Rebbe. 12 pages. Okay, so 12 of these pages. 12. I don't believe there's a mimer that long in the whole Torah Or. 12, count them. So it's a very, very long and elaborate mimer. I have not learned it. I'm just a second vessel, a cliché, but we'll do our best to unpackage the energy. From my humble understanding, what we're about to learn is one of the first teachings that the Alter Rebbe heard from the Maggid Mizrich that lassoed him into the Hasidic movement. In terms of understanding that Torah exists on many, many different playing fields and many different levels. When a person is not aligned or in tune with the psycho-spiritual level of Torah. So you're learning it as information. So we just learned the halacha. And the halacha says that you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos, and even your animals are not allowed to carry on Shabbos. And it's a very, very practical and pragmatic idea. But Torah is really or. And because Torah is or, what does light do? It illuminates darkness. Now, I would not say this for my own self, but Torah in and of itself, without the or of Torah, is darkness also. I don't say this, and the Medrash says this. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, that when David HaMelech says, "B'machashakim hishivani," that they have placed me in darkness, the Medrash says, or the Gemara says, "Zu Talmud Bavli." This is the idea of the Babylonian Talmud, in which the dialectics and the back and forth and the question and answer of the Babylonian Talmud creates a sense of darkness because there's so much questioning and so much to uncover and to unsheath. But if you're looking at from top down, from milamai lamata, from ascent to descent, so then you see everything in its spiritual energy and its spiritual truth. So what are we going to look at? How are we going to analyze these animals that have collars or bits on their collars, and the permissibility or the prohibition of them entering and exit the public domain on Shabbos? How does the Maggid Midrash teach it, in which the Alter Rebbe teaches us? He says, don't read it the word sher as with a tzere, which means collar or muzzle. Read it shir. Kol baile hashir, all masters of song, all masters of music. Hayoitzin bashir. What does it mean? They exit. They exit themselves. They exit their existences by the bittul, by the self-transparency and true suspension of ego from the song, from the music that they are vibrating with. And then they re-enter into their own reality and re-enter into their own existence by that same music. And that's how he sees it. It's a discussion about the malachim. Who are the animals? The Ifanim, right? The Ifanim are the lowest type of angels. And the holy animals. But they're not holy animals. They're holy beings. They're celestial beings. They're amorphic beings. They have no physicality to them. They're only energy. They have a very, very refined vessel called a spiritual body, but it's not a physical body. And being that that's the case, just like every entity in the physical world serves Hashem by its own existence, so too, where does that idea of serving Hashem by them even being alive come from? It precipitates from a higher energy. And these are called the malachim, in which we are euphemistically defining them as baile ashir, masters of song. And this is the way we call them, the holy animals. And again, we have this also, the imagery of Yecheskel's prophecy of the lion is on the right side, the eagle is on the left side. I'm sorry, the ox is on the left side, the eagle is in the middle. So we have this imagery also the imagery of animals as the 12 tribes, which is named in this week's Parsha, which I said trying every week to correlate one idea to the Parsha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu l'chol shahakol mi'amidbar. Okay, so with this succinct introduction, we'll start the mimer. There's a lot here. It's very, very dense, so bear with me. If there's any confusion, again, we really should be learning a 12-page mimer from the Mittler Rebbe. But Baruch Hashem, we're blessed to learn these words. Yes?
This is a one-paragraph thing, mimer of the Alter Rebbe that expounds upon, that condenses a 12-page mimer of the Mittler Rebbe.
The Mittler Rebbe is the second Rebbe, his son. So it's the next generation. So he's first.
The opposite.
Yes. This is the initial flash, the Chachma, right? And then you have the Bina. So we're learning the Chachma. We're learning how it is in the imagination, in the creativity. Imre Bina is the sefer for the Mittler Rebbe. Very good. Yeah. So one more time. Yaval hu Haya Avi Yoshev Ohel Mikne. Yaval was the father of this nomadic tent-dwelling agriculturalist. V'shem Achiv Yuval, and his brother's name was Yuval. Hu Haya Avi Kol Tefes Kiner Ve'ugav. And he was the father of all who grasped the lyre and the flute, and basically the progenitor of all music. The DJ is getting excited. Baruch Hashem. Hine Amar Azal, behold, our sages say, quoting what we just quoted in Gemara Shabbos, Kol baile hasher yoitzin basher chuli. All any animal that has a collar to them are able to exit to the public domain with that collar. What does that mean spiritually speaking? Any notion of elevation from one existence or one being of reality to another being of reality, for example, ascending from the lower level of Gan Eden to the higher level of Gan Eden, etc., and the like, is only through music, is only through song. Now, is it like the song that we know in this world, or is it some type of celestial song? What is a song? What is music? Music is the idea of revealing that which is concealed, and the idea that it's able to penetrate very, very deeply within a place of beyond verbalization. That I'm able to enter into a space of feeling something very deeply in which I can't articulate, but the music is able to articulate that in me. Exactly. Not only unverbal, but perhaps even pre-verbal. Okay? And this is called in Chassidus bitul hayesh. Practically, we'll translate it as the nullification of ego. But here we're speaking about the idea of a suspension of one reality for the sake of a deeper part of that reality. And in general, he's going to give the examples. As we know that it's impossible to go from one sense of self to another sense of self unless you have some type of ayin, some type of non-existence in the middle, as a bridge. And then you can now unearth and reveal a deeper reality with greater blessing, with greater bounty and energy, specifically because you shed the previous layer. Kamashal, for example, Hagarin hanizra ba'aretz, a seed which is sown in the earth, shetzarech lias nirkav ba'aretz, which is required to now disintegrate and decompose in the earth. As we know, where is the power of growth located? It is not in the seed, it's in the earth itself. Because you can have a seed on this table for 1,000 years, it won't grow. But it's specifically through the earth and the energy of the earth, as we say in Chassidus, it's called koyach hatzomeach ba'aretz, the power of vegetation latent within the earth, in which the earth allows for the seed to shed its layer and now become unseeded. But as it unseeds, so the seed becomes, so to speak, lonely and depressed as it's departing from one sense of self, departing from one sense of being. I've known myself like this for so long, and now I got spiritually, so to speak, punched in the face. Now who am I and what am I? And am I questioning my existence? And all of a sudden I begin to grow wings. And all of a sudden I begin to grow leaves. And all of a sudden I know myself as a totally new person. So there has to be this ayin be'emtza, this non-existence, this absolute suspension of self, to create this transparency, to create a sense of removing the self. And only through this mechanism of growth can there be subsequent growth and many, many, many more gar'inim, many more seeds. As it is down here in the physical world, this metaphor is replicated in the higher worlds as well. That a neshama and a malach in the celestial realms are likened to seeds. And what is their music? Their music is the godly light, meaning to say, what is their earth? What is their earth? The earth is the godly light that is surrounding them and pervading them. And they are like a little seed dripped into the quote-unquote mother earth of the Or Ein Sof. And that itself is their vibration, that itself is their music that allows themselves to shed from one energy to the next. And this is how he explains celestial music. And as we understand it here, that if music is meant for us to transition from one mood to another, and therefore classical will be one way, and the DJs in the Russo have to say hip-hop is in another way, and jazz is another way. And each one is another facet of our personality. And how do we know? Because we groove and we jive and we dance and we sing differently to each facet of the music. And even if you'll say, I only listen to Chassidus and Nigunim, even that can be faster or slower, as we're going to say soon, up tempo or down tempo. And is this a niggin from Klimovich, or is it a niggin from another place? In which, depending on the location and Nevel, shkoyach, thank you. And depending on the location of origin, will it dictate the energy of that music? And that's how you know. You'll say, okay, this is a very Chabad niggin. Okay, and this is a very another type of niggin that evokes a certain energy, a certain power and facet within the soul. Now, we're not going to get into the specifics of where music in the physical world comes from. Let's read a little more. So too, we can apply this example, this paradigm of the seed decomposing and rotting for the sake of becoming more of its truer self and proliferating and growing. And we can apply that to souls and angels, in order for there to be an elevation and ascent, with greater grasp and greater comprehension of the divine light. There first has to be a prioritization of the nullification of one's ego, and an absolute removal of the preconceived notion, the pre-comprehension that you thought you had. And only afterwards can you go into a more profound and deeper comprehension, a more profound and deeper awareness. The Alter Rebbe is revealing to us many, many secrets about how Gan Eden works. And he says there's a mystical pillar, an amud. An amud is like almost like an elevator, right? This mystical pillar that is attaching the ceiling, which is Gan Eden HaElyon, to the floor, which is Gan Eden HaTachton. And it's through this mystical pillar or this mystical mechanism which causes elevation for the soul that allows for the shedding of the lower level of Gan Eden, i.e. the lower level of comprehension or perception of godly revelation, to now enter into a space that is of a higher level. And this is what implements the power of transparency and the power of the removal of self. And that's the meaning of the inner mystical meaning of the Mishnah, that not only, again, Baile Ashir literally means the animals, right? Who is upon them is a muzzle or a bit. But here we're saying, no, these are the masters of music, the masters of how music is manipulated, or how music manipulates the soul to create some type of energy or paradigm of where we're holding. So it says, Kol Baile Asher Yoitzin. They leave. Where are they leaving to? In the Pashup shot, we said they leave from a private domain to a public domain. Here, they're leaving their own existence. They're leaving their own preconceived notion. They're leaving their own pre-comprehension. Whatever they understood before is now left. Kol Yoitzin Bashir, V'nimshachim. And they're drawn to now ascend and elevate to a higher, more deeper, more profound experience through that song. And therefore, how beautiful is this? That when the time was, in the time in which any person would bring up a korban, an offering in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, Haya Tzarech Liyez Gamkein Shir. The Leviim had to play music. This was part of the experience. Whether it's the Kohen, whether it's the simpleton, the Yisrael, there had to be music there. Why? Just do your asham, do your vidui, do whatever you need to do your supplication. Why is there to be music? Because depending on the music was the vibe, was the perception, and also maybe the remorse that needed to be evoked within the person bringing their korban. There had to be a song. And again, everything in the lower world is mimicking and reflecting the higher world. And therefore, because the Beis HaMikdash, there's a Beis HaMikdash Shel Lamata, right? Yerushalayim Shel Lamata is akin to Yerushalayim Shel Maila. And therefore, just like there's music and song that is causing the nullification of one existence in the higher world to now enter into a new space of existence, so too that precipitates down into our world. And therefore, what's the manifestation of that in the Beis HaMikdash? The Leviim's music that is causing me to have a suspension of my own personal ego when I bring the korban up. Korban, what are we bringing? We're bringing close our animal soul, our animal consciousness, that now it has to shed that layer in order to now reveal a deeper part of ourselves. And that's through the powerful music of the Leviim. The whole notion of a korban is the elevation and ascent from below to above, leaving our terrestrial, physical confines and elevating into a deeper, more spiritual realm. This is a fire which is a pleasing fragrance, a pleasing aroma. And in order to reveal the power of this, this requires music. Now, Bechinas Bittul Kanal, in which this music, when I listen to it, I become softer, I become less dense, less coarse, Sheyuchalis Alis, that we're now able to ascend. Now, the next paragraph is going to go into depth in terms of how, basically a class in music composition, which is beyond my forte. But I will say, if we can say two ideas in regards to music. There are some songs that, and again, I'm speaking practically and pragmatically, and I'm also speaking from a maybe Hasidic and Kabbalistic perspective, okay? There is some music that is meant and intended either by the musician or by the listener, how we absorb it, to get lost in the music and to lose ourselves in that regard. And that requires a little bit of emotional manipulation. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's just part of the music. That I'm going to make a sad song, a happy song, a style of music that is going to cause me to now be less of myself. Okay? But then there's a higher level of music that is intended for you to find yourself, not only lose yourself. And that finding of yourself is a deeper level of consciousness that is able to now elevate you to a part of yourself that you never knew existed. Okay? Now again, what music am I referring to? That's up to the listener of these words to identify in his or her own soul. But the idea is that in general, you can divide music into these two fortes. Now, depending on quote unquote the bittul of the musician, the bittul of the artist, in which was his intention for? Was it to create more of you in the sense that I'm thinking about myself, or was it to create less of you and I'm thinking more about, again, God, my soul, my higher self? Some music, again, we lose ourselves, but then there's a hyper focus on the loss of self. The idea of depression in general, we think is, I'm less of myself, but it's a very, very egocentric experience. We just perceive it as something that my battered and bruised ego, so that I'm going to become nothing. But is becoming nothing the ultimate level of something? You become a yesh without a direction. Whereas when a person really is focused, and that's my favorite definition for bittul, that they have an incredible awareness of what their purpose is. Now they're not just obsessed with losing themselves, but they're obsessed with now finding themselves, but not finding themselves for the sake of, I need to find myself, but what's my mission and purpose in life to now reciprocate what Hashem gave me as a gift to all of creation. And there's different motifs of music of connecting to these ideas. That's just in general. Now, in particular, if I can ask anybody in the Zoom who's on, just to put yourself on mute, thank you. Shir pashut v'shir kafel. First, we get into two types of music. One is called a simple song, and one is called a double song. Okay? What's a simple song and a double song? We'll get there in a second. Sorry, one more time on the Zoom. If anybody is not on mute, please place yourself on mute. Thank you so much. That in this amud, right, we spoke about this celestial pillar, that almost like a spiritual elevator that catapults the soul from one existence to the next. There are three colors in it. What are the three colors? Chiver v'sumak shu b'chines chesed u'gvura v'yarik b'chines iskalus chuli. With a shorter maimarim, you really have to fill in. But so forgive me for not filling in so much, but we're going to read and translate. There are three colors: white, red, which represent the faculties of chesed and gvura, kindness, benevolence, love, versus severity, discipline, and restraint. And then you have a third called green. And green is called hiskalulus. Green is tiferes. Green is the idea of an inter-inclusion of faculties coexisting harmoniously and you'd say a symphony altogether. A harmony. In the realm of bittul, the idea of, again, focus and a suspension of ego, there are many, many different levels. So now, I'm just adding this in, if it's not clear by now. the notion of absorbing music and its healthiest intent is to become more bittul, which means to say more focused to your mission. If you become more focused on another aspect of yourself, that's a distraction. So a lot of music that we listen to, or we don't listen to, are distractions to what our true cause is. Now, it's not to say that that's evil or negative or something bad. It's just, is this making me more in tune with my mission on this earth? If it is an expression of my truer and deeper self, it has less stanzas. It has less composition. It is called an expression of simplicity. This is called shir pashut. Now, I looked in the back for a second, and again, I'm saying this outside right now because it's a bit mystical, but we have 5 dimensions of the soul. In Hebrew, and I'll translate in English, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. The first 3 we call conscious faculties of the biological element of the soul, the emotional dimension of the soul, and the intellectual dimension. And then you have chaya, which is the willpower and pleasure of existing. And then you have what we call yechida shebenefesh. Yechida is literally translated as she's the feminine of the masculine, which is yachid, right? We call Hashem yachid chei lami melech. He's the unique one, the singular energy, the singular nucleus of all of existence. And that is literally the fragment of Hashem in our consciousness, okay? Now, even though I just enumerated 5 powers, 5 dimensions of the soul, can we even count Yechida as one? Or is that the essence of everything? And therefore from Yechida, what is the offshoot from that? You'll have 4 remaining, okay? So now in the Maimer, we're going to say you have Shir Pashut, Shir Kaful, Shir Meshulash, and Shir Rabua, which is the simple song, the double song, the triplet, and the quartet. Okay? Now, this idea of single, double, triple, and quadruple, relative to the soul, is the idea of, as we discussed in a few weeks past, the notion of distance and dissonance versus closeness and unification. The closer you are to your soul, the less you need to sing, or the less complicated your song needs to be. The more distant you are from your soul, the more complex and sophisticated the song needs to be in order to now get you back to your soul. Correct. And therefore the longer journey then dictates a level of complexity. So therefore, yes, the quartet is beautiful and the trio is amazing and just the piano and the violin is gorgeous, but there's something unique about, as it says in the back of the notes, that this shir pashut is literally the yell of the soul. And the yell of the soul encapsulates the greatest level of music. And again, what's music in our context? Al pi Chassidus, music is this vibration of energy coming from an extremely lofty place that causes you to be more bittul, more focused, more connected, more suspended from your own ego and entering into a space of non-existence. And if that's the message of music, there's a greater achievement in that, in the simplicity of the music versus the complexity of the music. If this makes sense at all.
Yeah.
Okay? Want to ask us something?
What? I love how you pick up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just forgot already. Like, where were we?
We just started the second paragraph.
No, I know where we are physically, but this all comes from the word shear, which is a play on the word
share, which is collar, which has to do with the animals. And we're now saying that euphemistically, spiritually, the idea of the exiting of the animals from their pen on Shabbos represents also the exiting of the celestial souls and spiritual animals, i.e. malachim, angels in the heavenly realms. And the idea is not about Shabbos and caring, is the idea of can they now gravitate and elevate to a newer found existence of perception of godliness versus a lesser one.
And that's dependent upon whether or not the thing that they're wearing around their neck is something that's part of them or not normally? Forget
about the neck, because now we're defining it as shir, now it's music. In the Pashup shot, it's using the same letter, sher, which is pronounced as in Hebrew as...
Why was that mission originally brought?
Why was it or where?
Why?
That's the origin of the simple interpretation, which is speaking about the animals. And the collar or muzzle in Hebrew is called a sher. Now he's making a play on words. Don't read it as collar or muzzle. Read it as music.
No,
That
my
all.
question is how was that? Why was that Mishnah brought in this particular mind?
Very good. I didn't explain it all. It's because Yuval is the creator of music. Yuval is the first. Yuval, the son of Lemech, the great grandchild of Adam Arishon, the great grandchild of Cain and Hevel, or Cain in particular, is the creator of instruments. Very good. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier.
Isn't that an important piece of information?
Very much. I thought
I don't know how we got here.
I thought I mentioned it in the beginning.
Sorry, maybe you did. I just forgot.
All good. That's the. If you look at the first line, that he says V'shem achiv Yuval Haya Avi kol toifes kiner ve'ugav. Right. He was the father and master of all of musical composition and particularly certain types of instruments. That's how we got there. Very good though. Thank you for clarifying. So now we're getting into a more profound discussion on the various dynamics of how music composition works. Again, according to the mystical perspective. And we have these three colors, which the three colors of white, red, and green are the colors of the first spheros of Chesed, Gvur, and Tiferes, which now we're discussing the idea of something which is shir pashut, this simple song, which is this cry that is beyond complexity. It is beyond any facet or faculty. It's just the yearning of the heart that is so deep and so profound. Now, I'm just going to add one more thing. The idea of this bittul, right? What are we talking about? So the Gemara says that Rab Zera, in order to understand and physically move to Yerushalayim from Babylonia, and in order to understand Talmud Yerushalmi, to transition from the understanding of Talmud Bavli, is the idea, what did he have to do? He fasted either 60 fasts or 100 fasts. Okay? Now, 60, the number 60 in general, is the idea of batul be shishim, right? One drop of milk falls into your cholent, and if you have 60 times more, it could be edible. So the idea of 60 represents the idea of a certain sense of nullification, right? A certain sense of now I lost a sense of self in order to gain a deeper sense of self. So now the question is asked, how can Rab Zera do this? You're not allowed to forget Torah. So he says he forgot the Torah of Talmud Bavli in order to learn the Talmud of Yerushalmi. So the simple answer is that he didn't forget the Torah that he learned. He forgot the methodology, the complicated, seemingly convoluted methodology of Babylon. As David HaMelech said, right? They placed me in darkness. This was speaking about the Babylonian Talmud. And relative to the way they learned in Bavel versus Yerushalayim, it was much more convoluted and complex. Whereas Yerushalayim has the same letters as Yir'ah Shalim, complete awe, complete reverence, in which the style of learning there is much more complete. And the idea as well of we compare these two notions of Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi, also to the idea of Nigla and Nister, the exoteric, legalistic dimension of Torah versus the esoteric, mystical dimension of Torah. And we say, to introduce a concept in Talmud Bavli, we say, Ta Shma, come and hear. Ta Shma, come and hear the idea. And we're using our ears. And our ears represent the idea of a distance and a dissonance, because I have to now explain to you what I'm trying to say. Versus Zohar, when it's trying to explain to you what it's trying to say, it doesn't say Ta Shma, it says Ta Chazi, come and see. That means to say, or it says Pasach Rabbi Shimon, right? And Rabbi Shimon opened up his discourse. It doesn't open up his discourse. Pasach Rabbi Shimon means it opened up the channel of revelation for this idea to come into the world. And therefore, when I open up a channel of revelation, everybody can see exactly what I'm saying. So therefore, the same idea here. And I'm using Rab Zera as a paradigm. And what I'm saying right now is not for my own self. This is an idea discussed in the Rebbe Rashav's writings in Samach Vav, my Marim, that spanned between the years of 1905 and 1908. And there he explains this idea of Rab Zera needing to become like the seed, shedding itself of a layer of understanding, of perception. And that's the idea of fasting, right? Literally shedding physical weight.
Is that his name is Zera? Like Zera?
Oh, maybe. Very good. Zera literally means small, but it could be the idea of Ze'er.
I didn't say seed.
Also, Zera, yeah, very good. But this is with an aleph, not an ayin. But it's okay. The idea is Phonetically, it could be good. So his fasting was, again, not to forget Torah, it's to forget how they taught me. Because I cannot learn science properly if my mind is a historical mind. Or I cannot approach art properly if my mind is still in mathematics. There are two different methodologies of learning, right brain and left brain. And in order to now introduce myself to this new Indian, it's not like, oh, I graduated first grade to go to second to go to third. And there's some type of advance from one to the other, that you need one to get to the other. Here, no. This is called a quantum leap. And in a quantum leap, there has to be a total shed, a total dissection almost of the previous understanding in order to get to the new one.
Unassociated with it's unassociated with the previous one?
Unassociated. The idea is that it's totally just like the difference between hearing and seeing, right? Meaning to say, it's going to take me a long time to learn this mimer. But imagine if I showed you the mimer. That's it. It's 1 second. I see the whole room in 1 second. How long is it going to take to describe the whole entire room? It's going to take me a book form, right? It's going to take me 100 pages to tell you what this room looks like and all the details and everything single sefer. But if you see it, it's in 1 second. So the same thing here. Why am I using this as a paradigm to understand shir pashut versus shir kafel versus shir meshulash? The shir pashut, this is the idea of vision. It's music that is so profound. And again, I don't know if I'm saying even music like the music that we know. Oh, I turned on the radio and I heard this song. Maybe. But this is speaking about, from what I understand, this is literally the revelation of Yechidah Shebenefesh, the music of the essence of the soul that is so profound that you're literally seeing your own godliness. And in that seeing of your own godliness, you cry and you scream and you sing. And the song is literally an expression of the deepest part of your soul. Yeah.
Like a single note, it could be a single instrument doing a very minimalist.
So I didn't want to bring instrument because at the end of the day, instrument may seem, relative to what I understand of the mimer, is already maybe sheer kafel. Because there's you and the instrument. And the instrument is trying to reveal something in you that you cannot do on your own. Here we're saying this is sheer pashut, meaning to say I'm divested of any complexity. Even the instrument itself is already convoluting my own essentiality. It's convoluting my own simplicity. Here, the Yechidah Shebenefesh is so singular, so one, that it doesn't require anything other than its own voice. And this is, again, I don't know what level we're describing in the celestial realms, but this is called the idea of shir pashut, that the closer you are to the unified core of existence, the less you have to reach, the less music you have to play, because you're right there. Shir kafel is already, let's just say, again, either you and an instrument, or maybe a duet, or maybe a harmony, which again implies the idea of distance. Shir meshulash is now you have something more symphonetic. Is the idea of you're bringing the piano and the violin and the flute.
Or it could also be that the person and the instrument have become one.
Correct. I'm not denying the power of it, and we need it all.
Meaning you can have them that they're separate, but then there's a way that you play an instrument,
right?
Where like you're more.
Correct. So because at the end of the day, the instrument, because it's a physical object, yes, it's able to reveal something in you. But from what I saw in the back, the idea is that the deepest part is playing your own self.
It's a separate entity.
Yeah. The deepest idea of shir pashut is you're playing your own soul. The soul is the ultimate instrument. Correct? Well, no, that's the no, because it says mishmer shir liyom Shabbos, and shir dafka is with instruments. But that's what it says in Beis Hamikdash. They played music in the Beis Hamikdash. I know. Yeah. Because there's no ein shvus b'mikdash.
I'm talking about Mishul.
One second. Let's get to it. In the realm of bittul. So again, we want to associate, and this is, I think, one of the most incredible maimarim, is the total redefinition of music. That music is, and again, from the perception of Kabbalah and Chassidus and the Alter Rebbe, music is the revelation of your deepest self. And if you're listening to music that is not getting you there, then the music is considered a distraction relative to the depth of your own neshama. Now, sometimes we need distractions to distract ourselves because we rather numb ourselves than experience the pain. But sometimes when we're in a very vulnerable place and we're just literally alone, psychologically and spiritually, this is the ultimate level of bittul. This is the ultimate level of entering into a new self that I've never been introduced to before. And like we said a little bit before, this is the two dimensions of music. A music that is more focused on getting you away from one place, or a music that is introducing you to a whole nother experience. Yesh b'chines bittul pashut, nikuda achas b'chines yud. There's one level of experiencing this focus and transparency, which we're calling nikuda achas, the one singular unified energy. We're associating this with the name of Hashem b'chines yud, right? In the yud kevavke, this is called the yud. What does a yud look like? It has no dimensionality, right? It has no shetach, like we say about the hay, right? The hay is length, width, and depth. There's a shetach there. There's a space. Correct. It's just it's we call it points versus lines. In Kabbalah, you say it's nikuda versus kavim. So the spheres are considered kavim, right? They are vectors. They are lines. The whole notion of a sphera is, can I interact with you? But I need to see you in order to interact with you, and you need to see me in order to interact with you. But a nikuda doesn't experience that. The nikuda just is. And therefore we're calling it the nikud of the soul, the yud of the soul, and this is called the shir pashut. However, there's another level of this suspension of ego, or this transparency of the soul. However, it is modified, and as it is connecting to the attributes of love or reverence, v'chuli, etc. And this is also applicable in the more external dimension of the attributes, which we call kindness and severity. So now you hear what he said? Ahava and yira versus chesed and gvura. What's the difference? Ahava is love. Okay? Show me love. The way you show love is by kindness. Meaning kindness is the exterior to what ahava is the interior. The only reason why I'm able to execute and to express and to exercise kindness is because I have love in me. And gvura, the idea of discipline, self-control, severity, might, is because I have yira. The idea of the sense of reverence, awe, respect internally will then manifest externally as the sense of restraint, self-control, or discipline. Yes?
You have one without the other? Like yira without gvura, or chesed without ava?
Sure you could. But he's saying the reason why you manifest in this physical way is because you have those features internally. Okay? So now this is called shir kaful, right? Shir kaful is the idea of that you're already dealing with something else. And because you're dealing with something else, now your bittul is not only an expression of the deepest part of yourself, but now you have to manifest into something else. And this I'll add, or we'll say, is the idea of the instrument, right? Now, is the idea of the instrument, it's the piano, it's the violin, or the instrument is also your music and your soul's music? Now I have to interact with you, and I have to now harmonize with you, and now I have to be part of reality, part of this world, and in part of this world, can I hear my friend's music or not? So depending on how bittul I am to my own music, will I be in a greater position to hearing your music or not? Can I even say it in my regular way?
Like the past two sentences, I just don't understand what you said.
The idea of shir pashut versus shir kaful is the idea of a certain sense of spiritual transparency on your own, by yourself, versus how you deal with the world. So we said pashut is the idea of this singular, unique energy alone, the yechidah shebenefesh, this cry, this visceral yell of wanting to be close to Hashem. But what happens now that I have to deal with you, and I have to deal with you? The question is, if I'm in tune with my own soul's music, then it will place me in a position to be in a greater role to be able to listen to your music. And that will then create a greater level of bittul between us. And when I say bittul, I mean harmony, right? A sense of transparency. If I'm not in tune with my own internal music, that means there's a dissonance there.
You can't connect with other people.
That it's much more difficult to connect to your own soul's music, what you're trying to say, what your energy, what your vibration is. And therefore, that requires a greater sense of bittul.
It's kind of like you got to put your own mask on the airplane before you put someone else's.
In a sense, yeah, in a sense. So now, Now, it's not so zelo pashut liot pashut, right? It's not so simple to be simple. Shir kaful doesn't only mean me and you. It also means, depending on what you give me, I now have to pivot towards that direction. Which means to say I have to now exercise another part of myself that I wasn't thinking about. So for example, he gives an example. A person who unfortunately has to smite his child. This is obviously an external, a very, very severe level of discipline. However, if you're not doing it with the bedrock of love, then it's abuse. Now again, this class is not advocating for hitting your kids. He's giving the example of, let's say, the idea of rebuking your child. Okay, the Alter Rebbe uses the word hit, but let's say the idea of rebuke. If the rebuke is coming from a, like Ace said, the idea of only one feature, only one faculty, then it's lonely, and therefore the recipient of that rebuke doesn't feel the love. So what do you have there? You have no bittul. But if you feel that the bedrock of the rebuke is, wow, it's because he loves me so much, and the coach, the therapist, the teacher, the parent, the sibling is challenging you, what? To become a seed in the ground, and therefore you have to lose and rot and decompose. Yes, it's hard, and yes, it's a struggle, but now I have to, but he's enabling me positively to reveal a deeper part of myself. This is called shir kafel. Now I have duplicated the energy, and therefore the recipient who's receiving gvura is really also receiving gvura only because of chesed. And now I'm also acting from a way of chesed, and now I'm manifesting gvura. And this is the idea of the shir kafel. What music do you hear? What music is the child hearing right now? Wow, Tati's so mean right now. But I know he loves me. Okay? Now, it's very, very important to understand that when we say the word shir, the music, there's also in our tone of voice, there's musicality, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So now, you could say, I love you. Or you could say, I love you. And it's the same exact words. But is it shir pashut, shir kafel, shir meshulash? It depends on which facet I'm working from. And it depends on what you receive. So not what you say, how you say it. I didn't hear that. I heard you were very intense. I didn't hear you were very loving. So and now again, this is very important. I just told you shir kafel, meaning to say that every rebuke and everything in the realm of gvura that you're giving to your friend or your child has to be with the bedrock of love. But if they don't feel that bedrock of love, then to them, what is it? It's not even shir kafel, it's nothing. There's no bittul there. And what do I interpret it as? Abuse, neglect. So that you can interview the parent in 50, 60 years and say, I did it all out of love. But at the end of the day, if the recipient didn't hear the music of love, then there's no music at all. And therefore, I have no relationship. I think an incredible... What's it? I think it's an incredible expression or definition of bittul is also the idea of a relationship. I know this is a little far-fetched because the translation of bittul is very hard in Chassidus, right? How do you say? I like to translate it as focused, connection, but think about it. In any relationship you have, what is the ingredient of that relationship? It's bittul. What is bittul? Bittul is the desire to see the truth of the relationship. If I have no bittul, there is what we call in the psychology parallel living, right? We're living in the same space. Okay, but Kingston and Albany are going in the same direction, but literally they'll never meet. There's no perpendicularity, right? There's no connection there. Okay, there's no intersection. Very good. There's no we're not meeting. So we're going in one thing, but at the end of the day, there's no meeting ground. Bittul is I want to feel you in me, and I want me to be part of you. And in order to do that, I have to understand you. I have to empathize with you. I have to feel your pain. I have to feel your joy. This is called shir kafel. This is called the double song. That I'm not only hearing my pashut, myself, and I'm just this amorphic being, nullified in existence, and I'm just this soul. No, I'm a soul that has to now deal with reality. Now we'll add to it a little bit more complicated. Shir meshulash is now, I'm not only interacting with you, but I have to now cope with how you respond back to me, in a sense. Okay? It's not me and you. It's me and you, and now your response back to me.
Is it a fun way to express emotional intelligence?
In a sense, yeah. But again, the question is, are we ready? Are we ready to jump into the fire? Are we ready to jump into the earth and lose and shed our layer of self? Most of us don't even want to deal with our own selves in order to even deal with another person. So we numb ourselves, we numb the pain, we numb the struggle, and we just say, let me just live my life and I'm doing good. And I'm not shearing, I'm just pashut. There's no music here. You're not vibing, you're not connecting to a deeper layer of self. You're just living. And that life is it's a pashut life. The sheer is the idea that I'm connecting to the deepest part of myself. And therefore I long for Hashem. I yearn for the soul. Kol haneshama ta'alel kol haleluka, right? Every single soul will praise you, Hashem. Kol neshimu neshima. Neshama from the word neshima. Every breath that I take is another expression of my gratitude towards Hashem, understanding that this is literally the pulse of life. So now, can I feel that in my own self? If I do, I'm in a greater position to now reveal that, excavate that, unearth that in my fellow, in my spouse, child, friend, etc. Now the question is, can they do that with somebody else? Is my impact that strong that I'm able to create a shir meshulash or even a shir meruba? But again, the idea is in our own sense of self, you have yud and hey and vav and hey, right? You have chachma, bina, zer anpin and nukvin, right? I'm just giving you the fours, right? You have atzilus, bri, yitzir, asiya, okay? You have these echelons of four. And again, this is what I understand from the back of the mimer, a little bit of the idea of the distance from the soul versus the unification of the soul, the essence I'm speaking about. So the greater, more distant you are, the more you have to sing, the more you have to manipulate, the more you have to try and make sure that, I can't just say we're learning Chassidus together. Let's bring sushi, right? Let's bring some wine. Let's say l'chaim on whatever it is, right? There always has to be some type of external thing that picks you up, right? But eventually, we want depth. We want a real relationship. But that external thing, is it only external for the sake of externality? It'll eventually shed and tear away. If it's external for the sake of becoming more pnimius, then it's something that is going to last. That's the question of the music.
When we get stuck on the outside, that's when Yiddishkeit becomes a religion instead of a relationship. We're getting stuck on the chitzainis and not actually bonding.
Very good. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start a few more lines up. What is the simple level of connection to the deepest part of our soul? This is called the essential point. You exemplified by the yud. Then you have a level of suspension of ego, this transparency reflected in our midas called love and awe. Etc. And this is also exercised in the external format of our emotions, which is reflected in chesed and gvura, benevolence and discipline. And then there's this inclusion of chesed and gvura within gvura together. We said the example, God forbid, like a person has to hit his child. Again, I'm going to use the word rebuke. This is the idea of gvura, discipline. But included in this is the backdrop, it's the bedrock, the foundation is love and benevolence and kindness and connection. Because as a result of the deep, loving desire to educate the child to go in the proper path, and therefore you're specifically hitting whose kid? You're not going to hit somebody else's kid. You're hitting yours. Why? Because you love them. Who am I not hitting? Meaning to say, who am I not rebuking? Who am I not disciplining? I'm not disciplining my neighbors. And why? Because I don't love them. It's specifically because I love, therefore I chastise, which is what Hashem says to us. Not somebody else. Because he who he loves, he chastises. This is a pasuk about Hashem to the Jewish people. So therefore, when the bittul, the idea of transparency, to our soul, is in the most simple context, nikra shir pashat. This is called the simple song, right? And the simple song, we said, is no dimensionality. There, it's just the yechidah shebenefesh, the deepest dimension of the soul. However, when you add the ingredient of love or reverence or respect or honor, so now you'll call it a shir kafel. You'll call it the vibration, the energy is called a double song. and then when there's an inclusion, a comprehension or comprehensiveness of the attributes, of the emotions, ahava v'yira gam shneim be'abitul, love and reverence, and they are both experiencing, i.e. the focus, the transparency to the soul, nikra shir meshulash. This is called a triad. This is called a trio, a three-rung song. Now again, I don't know if it's speaking about stanzas. I don't know if it's speaking about the way it's composed. I don't know if it's speaking about, again, the idea of three instruments together. But this is the idea that now you now have yourself, you have your own emotions in yourself, and now you have your own emotions in yourself, how you exercise those emotions to the outside. That's the three. And then to make it even more complicated, you have a quartet, right? You have, again, either you have four stanzas. What I understand it in music composition is the idea of like a ballad, okay? As opposed to like a song. Like a ballad is more like a, it's a journey within the music itself. Or you have what's it called? In classical music you have what is it called? I'll know it after the class. You look it up. Each symphony has its own but it's not called stanzas. It's something else in the I forgot what the word is. Okay. So now, look what he says, interesting. What's Shir Meruba? This quartet, this quadruple song, which again, we said is the idea of more distant from the unification of the soul. Because I'm dealing with more, right? Now I'm dealing with myself, my own emotions, how they are exercised to the other person, and the other person's emotions as they're exercised to me. That's the four, okay? Where is this reflected? Everything is so symmetrical, chevra. In Chassidus. Everything is so unified. You, Roy, were asking the question before, how do we jump from a halacha in Hilchas Shabbos about animals going outside of their barn on Shabbos to the idea of the celestial? Everything is unified, even in one word. And this is called Pnimius HaTorah, right? It's like asking, how are my fingers moving right now like this? Well, if you look into inside of my body and how my heart is working, right? It's a whole Pnimius. It's a whole inner dimension of how the external is working and functioning. So the same thing, Torah, right? The Torah has a light, has an energy, which is causing all of the other things in the physical world to look the way they look. Ein mashakos be'inin tcheles v'argaman v'teila shani v'sheish mashzar. Okay? When you are creating, I think it's Parshas Truma, in reference to the various tapestries of the Beis HaMikdash, you have a how do you say this in English? A weaving together of four different substances, materials. Okay, tcheles, the aquamarine blue or green, right? Usually coming from the chilazon, and then you have the argaman, which I believe is purple, and v'tela shani, which is scarlet, the sheish mashzar, which is sheish is linen. Okay, and they each make up a different color, and in order to the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan to properly function, you needed to specifically weave them in this kind. So now what's the altar we're looking at? This is called a Shir Meruba. Why are there specifically four substances, four materials to weave together, and why are they woven together? They are not a piano playing in one section, and a trumpet playing in the other, and a flute playing in the other, and the violin playing in the other. This is now a concerto. This is now a quartet. This is now woven within each other. And in order to do that, Chevra, what do you need? Our the best word of the day? Bittul. Bittul. What do you need? You literally need a relationship between the piano player and the violinist and we have to read the same music.
To fuse, you need that.
Correct. So the harmony and fusion of the Shir Meruba, again, is the most fantastic. But again, you have to sing more because you're distant. So it may appear more beautiful to us because it's so much more sophisticated and refined and gorgeous in terms of the music when you bring all these instruments together. But what does it imply spiritually? That you are more distant. You have a greater journey to go. So again, I don't know how that relates necessarily to the Beis HaMikdash, but this is the idea of the four materials being interwoven and interlocked together and creating one substance.
Is there a reason to use these four? Because weren't there more? Or was it just this?
Again, depending on what we're focusing on. But I To look at in Parshas Truma what he's referring to. Sheniskalus daled b'chis yachad, and these are this is the hiskalus, the inter-inclusion of these four dimensions, these four faculties all together. What are these four faculties? Ava ve'yira ve'rachmanus. This is called love and awe, respect and compassion. U'b'chinas sheish, and the idea of linen. What is sheish? Hu ha'ava mistuteres. This is the hidden love.
These are bechinas?
Yeah.
Rachmanis and...
Again, so we understand them as, let's say, Chesed Gvur Tiferes, or but Chesed Gvur Tiferes, remember, is the Chitzonius Amidos.
So where's
This-
Rachmanis? What is that?
Rachmanus is the internal of Tiferes.
That's fair.
Yeah. So you have Ava, Yira, and Rachmanus. Love, reverence, and compassion. Again,
Is that like a thing that Rachmanis is tied in with Tiferes?
of course. Of course. That's the meaning, the idea of to be a Rahman means to say that I empathize with you. Tiferes is the ultimate blend of beauty. Tiferes is the idea of the fusion together of different colors. So that's all. It's specifically that I'm feeling how you feel because I felt that way before. That now we're able to connect to each other. Now what's sheish, right? And sheish she's associating is ava mistuteres. How so? I'm beyond the scope of my understanding. But again, what's magical here is the Alter Rebbe's vision of Torah. That every single iota, guys, we're quoting a random pasuk from Parshas Truma or Testava, in the makeup and composition and structuring of the Mishkan.
Just like that had to be weaved, so too he's applying it over here, that the bechinas have to be weaved.
So too, that in your own nefesh, you could either have an isolation of each one of them and a disharmony of each one of them, and therefore, what do we say is the idea of toyu, of the world of chaos, is that they didn't find harmony amongst each other. So we have this in ourselves. That's it. I'm going to have so much self-control and discipline, and nobody's going to get in my way. Where's the flexibility? Or the other way, I'm going to be so flexible and so malleable and so kind and so open, right? That what? That I become abused, right? So you have to have the synthesis of both of them, and this is the beauty of music, and I really think the incredible paradigm of music in terms of seeing, literally physically seeing four entities, or again this whatever music you want to use, but different faculties, features, energies coming together and creating something, and this is the buildup.
And that's something that wouldn't be able to be created independently.
Correct.
You need to have.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now he goes deep.
What were we doing before?
I told you guys. Okay, bear with me, okay? Now he's saying, but I just for the sake of clarification, is we're understanding, again, I don't think he explicitly says it in the Maimon, but the idea of pashut, simple, is the essence of the soul. Kaful, double, means to say how the essence now manifests within my own faculties. Mishulash is the idea of how my essence now manifests to my own faculties in relation to somebody else. And we'll say Miruba, the four, is the idea of my essence manifesting to my own self as I relate to somebody else, and that somebody else now giving back to me.
That's already three.
That's four.
No, that was the third one.
My essence manifesting to myself and my emotions.
That's one.
That's two. Three is now me interacting with you, and now you reciprocating back to me. Okay, we could say that. Okay, that's Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Yeah, and that is Atzilus Bri Yitzir Asiya. Okay, and that is Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaya, because we're not counting Yechida, because Yechida is the nucleus and the singular energy that is causing everything to occur.
That's just silence.
Correct. Oh, beautiful. That's what it is. Meaning to say, it's the song of silence, right? It's a sound of silence. That's you have to do something in order to not do anything, in a sense.
There's a movie that I won't say the name of the movie, but it's a spoof, and the main character makes a hit song, and he records it in the studio, and it's just him just listening to the sound of nothing, and then they're recording it, and then everyone's like, "What's going on?" And then they're like, "Wow, it's genius."
Yeah.
And then it becomes a hit song on the radio, so everyone's listening to nothing.
silence.
And people are just like, "Whoa," blown away.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. If you're
And he's like
if it's
known to be like deep,
right,
even though nothing that he says is deep, but everyone thinks it's deep. Yeah.
that's all of us sometimes, no? So to go back, and Roy's saying something beautiful is the idea of again, I don't want to translate it as silence because he's calling it a sheer. At the end of the day, there has to be this. It's the song of appreciating not having to speak. But there's a song there. Maybe it's an internal song,
I thought
right?
it was Yichida.
That is yichida. We said that's yichida, right? But he's still calling it a sheer. Remember, sheer is synonymous with bittul. And in order to have bittul, you have to do something in order to initiate the nothingness, right? You can't just have the seed on the table. You have to put it in the ground. So there has to be an effort. You can't just not sing. So the malachim are in this zone of I have to place myself I have to want to lose myself in order to regain myself. But there has to be a movement there.
I think that would be Yichida.
It is yichida. That's what he's saying.
Because if the second you see the word I, Yichida's gone.
But that's exactly the point. This is not the I as we understand it. It's the I beyond.
Essential I.
Exactly. Meaning it's the I that you never met before because it was always part of you. It's your truest level of identity. Can we hear that? That's the question. So we say Ne'ilah Yom Kippur. It's a good time. Or you could say you're living with it every single moment. The Rebbe would say the idea of Moed Ani Lefanecha, the first breath of life. That's the Yechidah Shebnefesh manifesting. So we want to quickly grasp onto that. It says, I have scattered you like the four directions of heaven, right? Four directions, literally, it's the four winds, right? Ruches means direction and or wind. What is this idea of I've scattered you like the four winds, the four directions of Shamayim? Shehu hiskalulus mitzafin l'darim. This is the inclusion from north to south. Through the wind that is settling from north to south, and from east to west. Okay, as I said, bear with me. I'm just translating the words. And sometimes you have the inclusion of all four directions. We'll call it maybe an epicenter, in which you have the inclusion of all four, north, south, east, and west, through this haruach hamenashev kach, through this settling wind. What's the settling wind? Okay, so we said the four directions, right? And then you have the settling wind, which is the idea of the Yechidah Shebnefesh. And this is also called the orbiting of the sun, the movement of the sun from east to west. Who gamkein inyan bittul is also the notion of its nullification, its suspension of self. So, like I think this is echoed in either chapter 41 or 42 of Tanya, is the idea of that the movement of the sun itself is the expression of, and this is what the Rambam says. Again, I know that I don't know this to be scientifically, but perhaps spiritually and philosophically, that the sun, moon, and stars and the various constellations and zodiacs, etc., are intelligent beings. They are not just mass. They are intelligent beings, more intelligent than humans, but not as intelligent as malachim. So says the Rambam, which the Rambam we're speaking from a philosophical vantage point, not a Kabbalistic. Yeah.
In the children's book about how Avram discovers Hashem, it goes through how he thought the sun was Hashem, but when the sun was pushed away by the moon, that's when he knew it wasn't all powerful, and that's that bittul.
Beautiful. Wow.
And then with the moon being pushed by Hashem, by the sun,
Right.
he knew that the moon wasn't Hashem.
Right. Oh man, that's a very good insight. It also shows maybe that Avram was given an insight into them having not only bittul, but them having the intelligence to have bittul, right? Meaning to say that I have enough awareness to say that it's not me who's running the earth. Maybe. This is also again, I'm using the word orbiting, but it's the idea of the motion of the sun from east to west. Is the idea of the nullification. This is called the soul of the sun, which is its comprehension. There is an awareness of perhaps an awareness of self, and definitely an awareness of the divine. And as a result of this awareness, the awareness of the divine mover and shaker of existence, God. Therefore, the sun now is in a constant state of movement, and its movement is its transparency. Meaning to say, like Rivka is saying so eloquently, if it would just stay in one place, then what is that too reflective of? God. Right? God is the idea of he is what? He's a fixed, right? There's nothing that's moving Hashem, right? He is the space of the world, but the space of the world does not contain him. He contains the space of reality, but the space of reality doesn't contain him. So if it wouldn't move, therefore it has almost like a godlike feature that it's unchanging. Ani Hashem, lo shanisi. I am God who has not changed. But dafka, the movement and the orbiting of the sun, moon, stars, constellations, etc., their movement is their bittul. Meaning to say their movement is moving out of the way, is exercising their understanding that they are not the be-all and end-all of existence.
They say with narcissism that someone who's flexible is probably not a narcissist. Like it's a sign of health to be flexible. That's like the bittul.
We call the not to say God forbid that God is the ultimate ego, but it's we say yesh amiti versus yesh anivra, right? In Chassidus we say he's the true yesh, the true existence, versus the egocentric existence, which the egocentric existence needs to move out of the way in order to live a healthy, normal life. We have to move out of the way. If we're stuck in our own path, or if we're stuck in, or if we're obstructing somebody else's path, this is a very it's an unhealthy relationship. Kimevur beinin shemesh begivan doim, as it says, the sun in Givain was silent, right? What does it mean, shemesh begivan doim? This is a reference to, happened on, which date, guys? Gimel Tammuz, right? Gimel Tammuz, in which Yeshua stopped the sun. So how do you say he stopped the sun? He didn't say, how do you say stop in Hebrew?
Stop.
Atzor, right? Atzor. So it should have said, and Yeshua stopped the sun. But shemesh begivain, dom. Dom means to say, it didn't stop, it silenced. Silenced what? Silence the usual musicality of the sun, meaning the sun's movement and orbiting is its music. Because we said, what is music? Music is bittul. And if bittul is music and music is movement, therefore the orbiting and movement of the sun is its bittul. But if Yeshua stopped it, that means to say he didn't stop it, he silenced it. He silenced it, meaning it was not in motion anymore, and therefore it, so to speak, lost its bittul. That he said, like, just be in your place, just so we can fulfill this miracle on earth. Shemesh be given doim, that it's now silence. It's not in its motion of music. Bidrush de Charav Turim. Look over there. V'yesh bezed beis deus b'alei chasa imu mitzad avot shuka or mitzad bitul hapashat. Now there are two perspectives in how the sun moves. Now again, I'm using this is just my own very humble opinion. But when we speak about the sun, we're also speaking about our own sun, meaning to say we also exist in an orbit. We also exist in terms of relationships with others. And therefore, we either move for one or two reasons. Imu mitzad avo teshuka, our movement is either because love and yearning and craving, and say romance even, or mitzad bitul hapashat, or a simple suspension of self, a simple, transparent nullification. And as we said before, this is echoed, no pun intended, in the idea of music. Is the music causing me to love, to yearn, to crave? In which that music is now making me more of myself, evoking and eliciting different emotions and different facets of my personality. But in that evoking, I could now become a little bit more distant from my truth, because now I'm like subsumed by that music, and it manipulates my emotions. Or mitzad bitul hapashut, or is it? And again, this is very biased of me to say, but the idea of a niggin, or a deep niggin, that this is not necessarily as beautiful as a concerto or a symphony or whatever it is, but it's something raw, and that raw simplicity allows me to now engage into the deepest, most raw part of myself, and the most deepest part, raw part of myself, doesn't need the complexity, doesn't need the convolution of more instruments, it needs less. So in general, in our relationships, and again, in a healthy relationship, I believe you have to have both, right? If it's just bitul pashut, I'm not married to anybody. There's no personality here. I'm married to this amorphic being, right? It has no embodiment. It has nothing that I can hold on to, okay? And if it's just about av and teshuka, so that I'm married to a basket case, right? It's just, I'm in love, and there is no groundedness, right? So you can write me poetry all day long, but I want you to pay bills also. I'm looking at the men, guys, yeah, or girls. Yeah. So you hear the difference? Meaning to say, if it's just av and shuka without the bittul, so therefore it becomes, and again, I'm not speaking about egocentricity in a necessarily unhealthy manner, but it's my own orbit, it's my own being. Versus, and if it's that alone, if it's just Av and Chukka alone, so therefore it's all based on my emotions. So if I'm feeling happy today, my whole life is going to be dictated on that happiness. If I'm not feeling happy today, my whole life is going to be dictated on that sadness, and everybody will be affected by it. Do I have the bittul? Do I have the ultimate soul transparency to say, even though I'm not happy today, I'm going to make an effort to still be grounded enough and disciplined enough to be able to function in life? If it's the other way, if it's an overwhelming amount of bittul without any ava chukka, so I have no relationship with anybody. Because we know that ava is gematria echad, oneness. You need an ava to become one. But I can't become one with you if I feel no love. The bittul is also the idea of, again, it's the bedrock of the ava. If you have no bittul, if you only have ava without bittul, the ava will dissipate. But if you have only bittul without ava, so then you have no relationship either. Is it making sense?
It sounds like it's given different dimensions and each of them can work to itself.
Yes, of course. But I'm speaking about, again, he's speaking about the sun. I'm just trying to adapt it to the relationship. One more time. There are two perspectives in its orbiting, in its journey. If it's by function of a love or a yearning, or if it's by function of the simple vulnerability of the soul. And sometimes you have this simple, raw vulnerability of the soul, and then you have a more complicated, because we know love is very complicated, and I'm adding those words. Again, whenever you have kaful or meshulish or meruba, then it becomes more complicated. And therefore, love by definition is complex. Why is love complex? Why is love so hard to navigate? Because you're dealing with somebody else. You can't marry yourself. And I'm speaking not only about marriage, I'm speaking in any relationship. Your father, your mother, your children, your friends. This is all love. We're using ava as a euphemism for this interaction between one and the other. So it's whenever you're dealing with kaful, meshulish, meruba, you're always dealing with a much more complex framework, because I'm now dealing with somebody outside of myself. And this is the meaning of the sun shines. It goes to the south. And it orbits. I guess circulates to the north. Okay, to Pirush al Zeh Bezoyar, Reish Parshas Vayetze. You have to look at the explanation of this pasuk in the beginning of Parshas Vayetze in the Zoyar. Sheoli is bechinas iskalus dal bechinas mizrach umayrav tzafel v'darim choli v'zarach ubah min hamizrach umayrav. And this is the idea of the inclusion of north, south, east, and west. And it shines ubah hein mizrach umayrav. And this is the idea of the shining in the east and the west. Now, what did you just say? I don't know. Again, I advise everybody, if you want clarity, to listen to Rabbi Paltiel's classes in this, which again he studied comprehensively the 12-page mimer of the Mittler Rebbe on this mimer. Huh? The name of that mimer I think is Ada. Shema Achas Ada. He quotes. And Ada gave birth to Yaval, and he was the father of 10 dwellers with livestock. And the name of his brother was Yuval, and he was the father of all who took hold of a harp and a flute. But that mimer is called, and Ada gave birth. Ada is their mother. Now, just to clarify, what have we been analyzing? We've been analyzing only the second part of the pasuk. Yuval, right, versus Yaval. Yuval is the musician. Yuval is the composer. Yuval is the energy of what we call pnimius, the internalization of something, the integration of something. Like we said before, when you hear this music, it now stirs your emotions. And the stirring of the emotions is a very pnimius, a very inner dimension of functioning. Okay? Again, everything in Kabbalah and Chassidus is very nuanced. I'm going to just say this outside and then we'll learn it inside. When you are closer to the source, you have more of yourself or less of yourself? Less. Why? Because you now need to articulate yourself less. There needs to be less verbalization. Okay? We know in Kabbalah the difference between a yud and a vav. A vav is always the Indian of hamshacha, the Indian of drawing down. What do you need to draw down to? Vav in general, Pi Kabbalah, is the 6 midos, is chesed, gvura, tiferet, netzach, yisoid, is the 6 masculine energy, which represents or personifies the 6 emotional attributes of ourself. And being that that's the case, the mind now has to adapt and has to acclimate to the energies and the vicissitudes of the heart. And I have to know how to talk. I have to know how to self-talk. So a lot of our self-talk is negative. But if we were brainwashed positively by our superiors, we would speak to ourselves positively, but we would still have to talk. There would still need to be a bridge gapping the difference between the mind and the heart.
I always say, brainwash the brainwash.
Very good. Mm-hmm. So now, what do we say Yuval is? Yuval is, I'm saying it in English just for the sake of clarification, he was the father of all who took hold of harp and flute. Okay? When you take hold of harp and flute, right, that means to say that you're now making something that is not one with you. You're attempting to internalize this thing. And again, that's what we said the magic of music is, that it makes me feel ... It makes me feel sad. It makes me feel lonely. It makes me feel joyous. It makes me feel like I want to dance and sing and connect to people. Okay? Because Yuval is all about pnimi. Yuval is all about integration and internalization. Where is that reflected? In his u, in his vav. Yuval. What about Yaval? Okay. Yaval was the father of tent dwellers and livestock. The difference between music and tents. This tent, he's Avi Yoshev Ohel Mikneh. He was the father of tent dwellers and livestock. Okay? What are we saying here? In Yuval, Avi kol tefes kiner chuli. Pirush Yuval, Lashon Hoylacha. What does Yuval mean? Yuval means movement. What do we know in Parshas Noach? What comes to the world? A mabul, right? What is a mabul? We say in English is a flood, a deluge of water. But why do we call it a flood? What is it doing? What does a flood do? Unlike this water that you can now hold on to, there's a stoppage here, right? There's a silencing of the water. The mabul is a continuous stream of ongoing water, and therefore it's is it in modern day Hebrew? Mobile? Oh, well, mobile, yeah? What is it in Hebrew? Moving, right? Moving. So he said, right? Guys, we see the beauty of Hebrew, right? Mobility, right here. Shem mobil, right? That Yuval, Lashon Hoylacha, Yuval has the etymology of movement of going. Shem moivilu mamshich lemaila. That what does the father of music want to do to you? He wants to make you movil. He wants to make you mobile. He wants to now enchant you with your soul's mobility to teach you how to drive upwards. Mamshich lemaila, what do we say about kol yoitzin b'shir ve nimshachin b'shir? I don't have to only exit my existence, I now have to be drawn into a new existence. Because we said in the first part of the Maimer that from Gan Eden Atachlim you have to go to Gan Eden Elyon. And this is the idea through the Amud, through the divine pillar. But how do you do that? That's through the music, the bittul, the composition of the own neshama, that now you leave yourself in order to now find yourself. So he's playing this beautiful music, that he's able to now move you and mobilize you through the kinur and the ugav, through the harp and the flute, b'china shir kanal, with the aforementioned music, like we said above. Through this shir, through this song, through this music, is the idea of elevation. Like we said, the exiting from one domain, i.e. from transitioning from one level of reality to another, through that bittul, through that nullification, right? The fasting, 60 fast, to exit from Babylonia, and now to enter into Yerushalayim. Ta shma versus ta chazi. Now I see the music, I don't only hear it. But all of this is subsequent to a very necessary introduction. And he needs his older brother to now allow him to play the music of the soul. Who's the older brother? That's Yaval. Yaval is the Yaval who Haya Avi Yoshev Ohel Mikneh. He was the father, the origin of the tent dwellers and the livestock. Okay? Now, what does it mean? Ohel. For every pnimi, you need a makif. For every movement of internalization and integration, you need a previous, or we'd say what's the opposite of subsequent? A precedent, right? You need something that precedes that. And what precedes that? That's called makif. That's called subconscious energy. That's something that transcends you. So Yaval hu Haya Avi Yoshev Ohel. He was the father of the tent dweller, umikne, and the livestock. Ki ksiv l'shemesh sam Ohel bahem. As it says, like the sun acts as a tent for them. What does that mean? Pirush kedei sheyeh la'shemesh. We said the shemesh, right? La'shemesh sam Ohel bahem, right? In order for the sun to actually impact the world. And the sun is the idea of the music, right? We said the sun moves and has this orbiting because it's the music of the sun that makes it move. And also the whole notion of the sun is integration, the idea of photosynthesis, the idea of our world using sunlight to even function, right? Like we say, if the earth was moved 1 inch this way, 1 inch that way, we'd either freeze too much or burn. So the Shemesh has this power of integration. Is only because it acts as an oil to them. What is an oil? This tent. Oil, who bebichinas makif. Oil is the idea of makif, this encompassing energy, right? This initial act that will then create the stage for the musicians to play. So you'll say the makif is the promoter, right? The club promoter, right? The makif is the actual builders of the stage in order to enable the musicians to play. There is always some type of preceding power to be able to then create the internalized, integrated power. So you'll say, wow, the food was amazing, okay? So the food by dinner was integrated and I tasted it and it stimulated all of my senses, but somebody had to cook the food. So the chef, relative to the food itself, is the makif relative to the pnimi. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the chef itself is the idea of, so the shemesh has an oil, right? Meaning to say the power of integration, the ability to internalize something deep and have the movement of the shir pashat, shir kafel, shir mishul, shir meruba, and all of those facets tingling and stimulating in your mind, in your heart, etc., is all because there's some type of transcendent subconscious energy that is moving and shaking that world. Who is this? This is Yaval, not Yuval. Yaval, the tent dweller, then is the origin of the energy to enable Yuval to play his music.
He's before the Vav.
Correct. He is no Vav. Because Vav already is what? That there is a dissonance and a distance in creation that now I have to impact. Yaval is he's so close to the source that there's no music in whatsoever. Ohel, if you guys can mute yourself, thank you. The tent, which is this transcendent energy from above, draws down this light, that it is in a constant state of bittul. Guys, if you can mute yourself, I would appreciate it. Thank you. That it's in a constant state of. How do I do that? I'm muting myself. Yeah. Oh. Ohel will be makif. Milamaila, the oil is this transcendent energy from above. I'm using the word subconscious, that it exists within us all the time. Meaning to say, what's music? What's the problem with music? Is that it makes me feel a certain way and I become addicted to that feeling. And what happens when that addiction goes away? What happens when that feeling goes away? I'm yearning, I'm craving, I'm feeding for it. I wish I could feel the way I felt when that music is. And what happens to music in general? I know you could listen to a song 1,000 times, but at the end of the day, 1,001, that's it. I need 6 months of distance from this song. Okay, 10 years later, when I hear it in the, at the party or whatever it is, then I get excited. Then I haven't heard this song in so long. And 20 years ago, I listened to this song day and night. But at the end of the day, nobody's listening to one song. That's the popularity of music. And that's also the disadvantage of music, right? The chisaron of music is that it lacks continuity. You always need something new to be able to be re-inspired. So artists, right, musicians have to come out with new music. So even though, yes, at some point you stop and you have a beautiful collection of music, and I love this artist and that's what happened, but there's no way that you're only listening to this person. Because you are a complex being, and your soul is complex, and therefore you require different modes of musicality to inspire and to ignite you wherever you're holding in your life. This is all called integration. And the problem with it is that it's only a ha'ara, it's only a glimmer. But the makif milamayla nimshach ha'ara zushitia tamid b'mchenas bittul. The makif energy, the ohel, it's not about the music, it's about the identity. And what's the truest identity? The subconscious strata of the soul is in a constant state of connection, without any dissipation whatsoever. V'zel b'mchenas yaval. This is the idea of Yaval. Lashon Yaval lechamorim. Sho'inin bilbul v'taruvis. That he, confused the donkeys. I think it's a story in Shoftim. I think by the tribe of Binyamin. Sho'inin bilbul v'taruvis, right? Yaval. So you see both words. Yuval, he's using the word mobil in Hebrew, right? Mobility. Or like the mabul, the movement, right? Here he's saying, but Yaval can also be, like we said before, like Bavel, right? The Yaval, this is the idea of confusion and admixture. Why? Because when I am hit with a shock from the level of makif, what does it do to me? Music is what? A shock, so to speak, but that I can integrate. I love this song, it's amazing, or I don't like it. When you're hit with a shock of makif, there's bilbul, there's a blindness to you. I can't hear, I can't see, I can't taste, I can't smell. It's just the revelation of essence. Sheshamu bli ischalkus. In that realm, there is no division. There is no sectionality. What's the problem? In sectionality, it's shir pashat, shir kafel, shir meshul, shir meruba, and therefore that all expresses the idea of distance and disconnect. And therefore the power of makif is the idea of a yaval. Yaval is the etymology of bilbul. Again, confusion, but for the sake of tarufis, for the sake of mixing up, because you now have everything. What's the issue with music is that it's only limited to the genre. So I like musical, and I like classical, and I like jazz, and I like blues, and I like rap. So you have different genres, different echelons. Whenever you're dealing with genres and echelons, you're only dealing with a glimmer of integration. Here, the Yaval, he's the ohel, he's the general makif, subconscious energy. That there is no division, there is no sectionality. And therefore you can mix everything together. And therefore this mixture together can now shine and radiate below. In order to now create the reality of Yuval, create the reality of music. Avi kol teifes kinor, the master, the father, the origin of all who grasp the kinor, of all who grasp the harp. Shehu b'chinas bittul kanal, which, as we said, this is the aforementioned bittul of the music. So who the bittul of Yaval, which is the ultimate level of the shock therapy of the essence of the soul, is now the bedrock for creation. It's almost like saying Hashem had to create a world in order for a world to be. So the world to be, the reality that we live in right now, is called the pnimi, that I'm literally feeling my earth. But the creator of the world, in order to create creation, that's called the makif to it. That's called Yaval. So Yaval represents the idea of ohel. This is the idea of the dweller of the tent. The tent is the idea of something that encompasses me, that envelops me, that is beyond me, that I can't now limit by some type of genre or categorization of music. As we said, etymologically, the idea of ohel is the idea of something that envelops you and contains you altogether. And nevertheless, he is able to now herd livestock, which means to say that this Yaval is not just a makif, a transcendent subconscious energy that has nothing to do with creation. He's sitting in the tent, but the tent now has some type of relationship with the terrestrial beings, that there's an intent here. Intent. In the realm of makif, there is no up and down. There is no ascent or descent. There is no yoitzin b'shir v'nichnasin b'shir. That only works because you're at this level of Gan Eden Atacht and Gan Eden Elyon. There is some type of distance or closeness. But when you're swimming in the power of makif, when you're swimming in the power of essentiality, of that subconscious energy, that you're under the wings of the earth, literally the arms of the earth. That Hashem is what? Hashem holds the earth in his arms, in his anthropomorphic arms, so to speak. That he's holding creation all at once. So we see creation as a divided, disintegrated, literally disintegrated, splintered reality. And we're just trying to find ourselves in that reality. So we pick up the sparks, we call this birurim, right? And we try and integrate those sparks in ourselves. What's going to inspire me? What's going to motivate me? What's a toxic relationship? What's a healthy relationship? So I'm always searching and searching and searching. But then there's a level of reality that you don't have to search. There's literally the ultimate level of bittul. I would think this is the level of bitachon, the level of literally feeling cradled within our Father in heaven's arms. That at every single moment, there's a symmetry and there is a synchronicity, that there is no division between one moment and the next. Unlike music, which has stanzas and barriers and so to speak, a build-up, right? Here's the introduction, here's the first stanza, here's the bridge, here's the chorus, right? All of that in the composition of music is an amazing mashal to understand the different facets of our soul. You have an introduction, you have a chorus, you have a bridge, and all of these things are tantalizing a different part of ourselves. But here he's saying, no, there's a level deeper called Ohel, and that Ohel, that energy that is surrounding us, is like the arms of Hashem that is literally holding all of the fragmentation of reality and saying it's all one. Yaakov, who personifies this incredibly? Like Yaakov. Haya Avi, that he was a herder, a shepherd of sheep, and this is amazing. This week's Parsha, very good. See, I can't make this up. Baruch Hashem. And what did he do? And he stripped off from the staff, from the sticks, right? And caused them to see while they were mating in order to reproduce. What is this idea? That on the one hand he was makif, the idea of the roya is the idea of the shepherd that shepherds them, generally speaking, and then the idea of the integration. Hiskalulus chesed gvura tiferes ayin zoyer vayetze. Look in Parshas Parshas Vayetze. Guys, Chevra, really incredible. You're on this journey. We're on this journey together. And as I said before, Hashem blesses us that we're dafka this mimer. Yes, it's Parshas Vayetze, and yet we're still learning this mimer. She'adam, and it's quoting here. So we have Yaakov, that is the ultimate level of integration and symphony between the makif and the pnimi. Who's able to do that? Dafka Yaakov. And think about his life. On the one hand, he's makif. He's the idea of, I just want to be with Hashem. I just want to be, beyond the world. I just want to be Yoshev. By the way, what do we call him? Yoshev. Ishtam. Yoshev Ohel. Amazing. He's a man of tremendous sincerity. Ishtam, Yoshev Ohel, the dweller of the tent. Maybe etymologically, we're connecting the idea of Ohel and Ohel. That Yaakov is the dweller of the tent. He's all about the makif, right? I just want godliness. And all of a sudden, what's his journey now? He has to leave Haran, right? Leave Beersheba, go to Haran, and now he has to go into the realm of Pnimius. And this is the idea of, we're going to learn this on Shabbos, Leah and Rachel, and this is all of his vessels, and now he has to start integrating his power of makif, that usually would obliterate creation, would usually eliminate he doesn't want a sense of self. He doesn't want a separation. He doesn't want a reality. He just wants Hashem. But Hashem wants a dira b'tachtoinim. Hashem wants a dwelling place in the lower realms. And therefore I now have to give credence and justification for our world's existence. So Yaakov now has to go into the realm of business and deal with swindlers and deal with Lavan and all of and Esav and all of the energy that he has to deal with. This is all in Pnimi. So maybe he's the ultimate integration of Makiv and Pnimi. The idea of the bedrock and foundation of creation is the constancy of the true identity of the soul, that it's always there. But now we have to integrate it in our own personal life. And how do we fill up those cups of chesed, of gvura, of tiferes, of the different factions and facets of our soul? That what? That another person, he's called a herder, he's called a shepherd of sheep, and he shepherds them physically. Which is not the case by Yaakov, that on the one hand, he's not essentially, his true identity is not that he's a herder of sheep. His true identity is not that he's a royet soin, he's a shepherd. Rather, he's a Yoshev Ohel. He's a tent dweller. And we davka call a Torah scholar a tent dweller because it's the idea of that he's receiving from the makif. He's receiving from the transcendent subconscious energy of creation. That he draws down from the level of makifim to the level of this encompassing energy to now become a royat tzoyin, to now become a shepherd of sheep. And what does it mean, a shepherd of sheep? I misspoke before. What does it mean, a shepherd of sheep? That he now is able to feed every single one in accordance with what they need. But in order to feed everybody in accordance with what they need, what do you need to be? Connected to everyone. In order to connect to everybody, you have to have that unified, all-powerful, constant level.
That's what Rahmanis is. It's knowing when to give and when to withhold based on what the person needs. It's understanding the kli.
Very good. And who do we say this in the Torah?
It's a Paris. It's the Rashi.
That Yeshua was able to take over Moshe. Moshe was the ultimate Raya Mehemna. And who is the one who's able to take him over? Yeshua, because what he was called? Yoidei Ruchos. He was called the understander of spirits. That means to say that he could give a speech to 1,000 people. 600,000 people, very good. Right? What do we call it? Also in the Chachmas Harav, very good. Right? The bracha for, no, is it the Mashiach?
Yeah.
And also the when you see a Torah or when you see 600,000 Jews together, right? You make it this bracha, right? Chachmas Harazim, the knower of secrets, and Yeshua, it says, was the right. Elekei Arucha is Hashem, but he was the knower of souls, the knower of spirits. Why? Because each one has its own wind. Each one of us has our own wind, has our own movement, right? And therefore, Yeshua was the ultimate shepherd in the sense that he was able to speak to everybody simultaneously. How does he do that? If he would be locked into everybody's own personality, so it wouldn't work. But because he's taking from the reservoir of makif and now feeding it internalized to every single person, therefore it works. Because he's connected to that makif. Yoshev Ohel Mikneh. And therefore we call him Yoshev Ohel Mikneh. He's the dweller of tents and a herder, right? What's the conclusion line? That the whole time, what's the connection between tent dweller with livestock? Who cares? Telling you the tent dweller with livestock. Because in order for the tent dweller to be able to now create the next movement of music, i.e. Yaval, you have to be a herder. You have to be understanding of the livestock. Which is the idea of that the makif has, or the oiris have a connection to the vessels. So Yaakov has to take from the reservoir, the pool of makifim, that pool of energy that is beyond creation, and know how to now integrate it. So now we have, how is Yuval even able to play the music that he's playing? It's specifically because Yaval created the scene for him to do so. He created the stage for him to do so. Al pasuk bekoishesh ve'ayin oid me'inin mekanim beParshas Vayetze. Al pasuk ve'shei shanim betzeinecha chuli ve'al pasuk ve'elam b'mishpatim. Again, also quoting himself Torah or another mimer in Parshas Vayetze. He's also quoted the idea of bekoishesh eitzim. That's another mimer that speaks about the idea of the one who is gathering sticks. Kabbalistically, his idea is mikav sheish, that he was coming from the vector of 6, the idea of the 6 days of creation, and trying to make no difference between Shabbos and the weekday. Whereas really, we do need a difference. Mikoishesh means to gather, but also mikav shesh is the idea of understanding the difference between 6 and 7, which is also the idea of pnimi and makif, beyond the scope of this discussion. Anyway, l'chaim d'bracha.